Hello, friends. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. I'm joined by Monty. Once again, how are you, Monty?
Excellent, Rodge. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So we are doing something a little different. Today we're doing a faction review. We're going back to the old Rodge and Monty interactions of the
Yes.
days of Eld.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to look. You probably have the record for most faction reviews. I know it's not. I think if somebody gets to 4, maybe that's the most. I'll have to go back and look and
Oh, I
crunch
like
the
it.
numbers on that.
I'm going
I
to put
think
that
you've
on my
done
resume.
2, 3, or 4. Yeah, I know I've had a couple people a few times,
Yep.
but especially for second edition, I think you're the main man. But we're gonna talk the Mutatawwi'a today. So this was
Yes.
a request on the Patreon. So one of the guys requested it, and there's a lot of factions out there, and we moved these guys to the front of the line. I was helped out because you are intimately familiar with our Mutatawwi'a here. Is that
Yes.
correct, Monty?
Yep. Love running the Mutatawwi'a or mutts, if it's okay.
The mutts, yes.
Just so much fun and so asymmetrical. They stress my brain and my opponent's brain, it seems like.
Yeah, they're definitely a fun faction. A lot of death and mayhem on both sides. Monty, is this? I wanted to talk trash to you,
Uh-oh.
but I wasn't sure. Is this the army that you've painted 4 times?
It is.
Okay,
and
now
I
didn't
may
you
paint
just
it a 5th time.
you just sent me a message saying,
Yeah.
I did the wrong build. I'm gonna have to sell these guys, get some
Yes.
foot and some tribal hunters, and do it again." And I'm like,
It's true.
"Is this the 5th
It's
time?
true,
This is gonna
dude.
be the 5th time?"
Yes, maybe. I mean, I could add to what I have, but like I get these ideas, I want to strike out in a new direction, and then I look at like the build, I'm like, sell them and start over. It's quicker.
All right, yeah.
We'll see.
Especially with your speed. Not a big deal for you, but thought that was funny. So now that has to be a record for number of
It
armies
is a record
built.
for me. Yeah. I'm really making a point, Raj, kind of in the COVID era to like paint new things, find gorgeous figures, hunt down niches of history that I haven't done and try to paint new. But, sometimes you got to break your own rule. And if I have to, I'll go back a 5th time to the well for the mutts.
All right. Well, there must be something thematically speaking to you, paint wise, the models.
Yeah, there really are some awesome model choices. And in version 1 and 2, in version 1, there was some crazy stuff you could do. They kind of tamped that down in version
Yeah.
2. Probably good, but still, they're a lot of fun in version 2. And when we talked about doing the show, I dialed them up both to play them myself and also a friend of mine to play against me, and it just brings all the fun back. So
All right.
ready to
Glad
go.
to hear. So fun faction to play. And let's jump right into it. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about here, but let's set our parameters here, our baseline. So for equipment, we've got the Warlord and his Hearth Guards. They can be on foot with nothing special. They can be on horses or camels. And so you got 3 good options there. They don't have to match, as far as I can tell. Correct.
Yep, correct.
Sometimes you'll see that's restriction in there, but not for these guys. Warriors can be deployed on foot with nothing special or equipped with bows. And there's no levies here, only the lunatics, craziest. Levies are too smart to sign up for this riffraff, apparently.
Yep.
So, it must be one of the only factions that can take camels. The only one without mercenaries?
Yeah, I think so. I think there might be 1 or 2 special units or legendary units. I think the Mongols have one, but they're one of the only ones that can put them right into their main list. And that by itself is awesome right there. That's a huge plus.
Yeah, so let's refresh ourselves on camels. So I know that horses have a -1 to hit when they're attacking camels, and that'll play into a battle board ability. But if you're playing strictly within Age of Crusades, you got a lot of mounted units out there, so it can kind of be a foil for a lot of different armies. For movement, how does the movement work for them? How are they different from horses?
Right. Two main things. The first one is their first move is an L, and if they move a second time, which plays into the board, the second move is at M. And then the second thing is they don't get any special like move distance in terrain, but ending their movement in terrain, they're not penalized with a fatigue the way horses are.
Correct. So they will go short or whatever, but they won't take an extra fatigue like the horses will. So I think you could probably catch folks out. They do take the penalty against shooting, though they're a little easier to hit. So are you? I don't know. Every time I played them, there's been some camels running around. But you can be on horses. A double move at Al, is pretty valuable, I guess. How many Hearth Guards are you taking, and what are you generally equipping them with?
Yeah, so I painted up Hearth Guard heavy, which matches out with one of my ideas on the battle board. And I do like speed, so I painted up a lot of mounted. My Hearth Guard heavy is a mounted horse. I have 2 units of camel, but normally, like if you come up, right, when you come up to the table, the rule is you can reach in your box and deploy the table's edge. So if I'm facing someone on foot, I may not even put the camels out. I really want to see mounted if I'm going to take the hit that the camels have.
That makes perfect sense. If they've got horsemen, take the camels. If not, take the horses. Unless there's always some other faction. Maybe you want to take foot guys, but will you put the warlord on a camel too?
So that's a good decision point. At some point, it seems like it's not unusual for the 2 armies to be kind of beat down, and if the other person, their warlord's on a horse, then that's a real good decision point. I'll be like, well, if he's running a warlord on a horse, I'm going to ride a camel, and somewhere between turn 3, 4, and 5, when the troops bleed out, I can maybe get a shot, warlord to warlord, and beat them up.
Yeah, it's really, really a good option. Kind of insulates him against assassination, double move of the horseman. They don't. You can't even really engage a warlord on a camel if you're mounted. I mean, there's no point. I mean, maybe there's some combination of battle board abilities that would make sense for you, but for the most part, hitting on 6s, like you'll never voluntarily do that.
Agree.
Agree. All right. We get warriors on foot, pretty popular, and then the much maligned, infamous warriors with bows. So we know the warriors with bows need a little help on the battle board. Is there any help on the battle board here, Monty? Is there any?
It's super slim. I mean, they don't help them for shooting. And Rodge, I mean, we're, part of the thing of coming on the show is my opinion, right? But my opinion, I feel like the bow warriors are a trap. Like, I know, I've heard from the forum, some players, like, once they do warrior bow, banner, and suddenly you've got, like, this 25% of your warband is sunk into something that doesn't really gel well with how the mutts play. So I avoid them. And is it too late to pull out like what the great alternative is to the warrior bow?
You can mention it. I think you've been hinting at some
we could circle back
marks.
to it. The alternative really is tribal hunters. And I'm going to say it, and you're going to be like, but trust me, tribal hunters is what you want. They give you the shooting you're looking for with lots of abilities that make them better than your warriors with bows. So I painted them, and I don't use bow warriors.
I think that makes sense, and I kind of vaguely remember because we did the Age of Crusade mercenary review, and I think I was reviewing the tribal hunters, and I thought the mutts were one of the factions that could potentially use them because they can't take the levy with bow,
Correct.
So the tribal hunters kind of fill more of a niche. I guess thinking about the abilities coming up, there are a couple of defensive abilities that would keep your warrior bowman alive. But on the flip side, the wording on many of the abilities is you reduce your armor to trigger it. So with bow warriors, you can only reduce it once. You know, if you're in the wrong circumstances, your opponent might use a fatigue before you even get to trigger your ability, and then you can't even use any of your abilities that you might have queued up. You know, that one, I think there's like a reduce your armor, maybe to get block 4 hits or something like that. So, yeah, that kind of works against the board as well in that respect. But so we're mostly running warriors on foot then, and I think you do like 2 points of Hearth Guard. Is that how you?
You know, I'll run 3, but honestly, 2 is probably enough. You want warriors for, you know, building some small units that can kill more than what you will lose. And I like lately have snuck in the tribal hunter, and boy, that's just good. It's I mean, I knew it would be good, but it turned out way better than I thought it would, you know, playing it through.
Okay, it gives you a little something that you're not used to. So
yeah.
That's cool. All right. Warriors, I guess, what size units are you running?
Well, so if you're gonna run 24, that'd be 3 points of warriors. You could put them into 6-packs or play around with it a little bit. The mutts are very hungry for dice, and they also are gonna have an issue where there comes that time where you throw all scimitars or all crescents, and then you scratch your head and you're looking and you're like, I really could use one other face, right? One other facing. So I like to come up with a 7-point build to come out of the gate, because that thing's going to burn up very quickly. So starting with 6 saga dice is a little slim with how quickly your units die with the mutts.
Okay, so you're liking them a little smaller, a little more throwaway.
Right.
Okay. Well, that sounds good to me. Let's jump into the battle board, and usually up top, I say, you know, looks like the usual business, but that's not the case here today. So we got Allah Akbar.
Yep.
This is an interesting ability here that, I don't know, I guess you'll tell me how often you use it, but you can remove one of your models, not a mercenary, and choose an enemy unit within medium of their unit. You roll 3 dice. The chosen unit suffers a casualty for each die that rolls above their melee armor. If a Hearth Guard was removed, so if you sacrificed a Hearth Guard, you get a +1 bonus to each of those die. So I guess a couple of points up front. This is in the top bar. This is a basic activation, so you can load this up. The Crescent, is that the uncommon?
Yes, the uncommon.
Okay, so you do have to roll uncommons. So you know, sometimes you might want to do it, but you get kind of hosed. It is like a shooting attack, but it is not a shooting activation, which means they can't use saga abilities. You can't use saga abilities for purposes of scenarios and special abilities. It's not a shooting attack, and it's a casualty. So no defense dice, no block.
Right. That's huge.
So if you are going to sacrifice a warrior against to another warrior unit, you have to roll 5s on 3 dice, and you know, probably you'll get one. Against levies, it'll work on 4s. Against Hearth Guards on a 6, and then with the +1. So, Monty, what's going on here? When are you using this ability?
Yeah, so it is situational, like a lot of things on this board. A piece of it is the math. So like if you remember, you first 100% are going to lose the figure you are taking up to activate it for just 3 chances for this to go off against your opponent. So it doesn't really make sense generally to kill a Hearth Guard figure and then say, oh great, I'm doing this on a levy unit and hitting them on 3, 4, 5s, and 6s, because your Hearth Guard is gone and you might get 2 or 3 of those, but I mean, that's kind of a trade. So what you're really looking for is situation. You're looking for like, when does this make sense? And so a couple really obvious plays are like if you're playing Old Feud and your opponent has hidden away their hero in hardcover, and you can get a levy with an M, and maybe even that unit is behind another unit, so you can't even put a charge on it. And say it's like, one of the weaker ones, and you could, with like sacrificing a couple of hero figures, you could potentially take that figure right off the table. I mean, that's pretty good. Wounded warlords that have pulled back and are hidden behind other units. Again, you're going to look at it like if the warlord has, units that are nearby that he can sacrifice on resilience, not resilience, but, their bodyguards rule, then maybe you don't want to do it. But maybe it's to take away a saga die. I have to say, my very first uncommon always goes into fanaticism, and I'll explain that later. So Allah Akbar is something that boils up in my mind maybe a little closer to turns 3, 4, and 5, where I have beat up units and I have like a figure here and a figure there, and maybe as I'm placing my dice, I rolled a lot of crescents. I'm like, ooh, if I could do that, I take a saga die out of off the table for him. So quite situational, but when you hit it and it's a home run, boy, it's satisfying.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it as well. And mid-late game when you're down to 1, 2, or 3 warriors, their warlord's exhausted next to them. In another faction, you might charge in with those 1 or 2 guys, but I'll just pop the uncommon. I'll just get 3 dice straight up, and if I get the 6, there's no chance of him blocking it and knocking him out. So
he's gone.
Risk first reward. But Monty, there's people, they'll tell you, load it up, lob your Hearth Guard in there, target their warlord, you'll take him out in no time. There's always, I guarantee we're going to get a comment like that below about somebody sacrificing a few Hearth Guard to kill something.
I mean, you absolutely can. But now you might want to have more than 1 crescent. You might want 3. Hitting on 5s and 6s would be 9 rolls. You do the math hammer. Or you just feel lucky. If you're a gambler, like you love Allah Akbar, you're like, I'm just going to do this. It's going to work. Right?
So, I think it's cool. I believe there was ability in first edition that was similar, or maybe even nastier, or I don't know. We don't need to dredge up the first edition stuff, but it's cool they kept it in there. Gives you kind of some shooting punch in a way. And I guess I will say, too, that you can be sneaky in a couple scenarios that say no advanced abilities or no shooting on the first turn. And, well, this is a basic ability. It's not a shooting ability. So you can actually be sneaky and do some damage on the first turn in certain scenarios where it's supposed to be, completely damage-free. So... not sure if that's worth it, but you have the option there. Get a little sneaky. So, all right. Well, that was a good one. Let's jump down to the battle board proper here. We got some meat and potatoes here, like Jin's.
That one.
Uncommon or rare. Activate a foot unit to charge. Its charge distance is L. Me likey. Nothing wrong with that,
Very efficient, long distance.
And so it's got the extra movement rolled up with the activation within it. So you can use this. You talk about rolling swords and crescents sometimes with your big warriors. You'll miss that stupid common dice. You need to charge on that one turn. Roll 5 uncommons. So it's good having another way to do it.
Exactly.
With this right here. Makes up for just having foot sloggers for sure. Nothing wrong here. I'm assuming most turns you're going to have this sucker queued up. Is that right?
Right. The only thing I'd mention is just keep in mind, like you look at this, if you were to, cross, go into uneven terrain, you're going to drop your movement from L to
Sure. So there's
you
nothing
you don't
special.
It's not like the picks where they're running through the woods. You can't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't override the basic terrain rules like maybe some other abilities would, but it would have to specify that. So, yeah, great ability. This is used against me frequently, Monty.
Yep, I can see that.
To my chagrin. So, great, solid ability. Don't think we have much more to say about that one. Why don't you talk a little bit about Allah's Blessing here? Can you describe that one?
Right. So 2 commons. So it is a little spendy. Melee or shooting reaction. And I will say, with the fact that we've got Fanaticism, I have never used 2 of my common dice for a shooting reaction. I use it to stack with some other abilities in here with armor reduction, because here's the real key. If you reduce your armor by 1, your opponent must discard 4 hits after they've rolled their attack dice.
Yeah.
So that's really the key, the 4 hits. So just for example, if you charge a levy unit, the most dice they can throw, unless there's something on their board, they're usually going to be throwing, a levy shooting, they're going to be throwing 4 dice. So if you play Allah's Blessing, you could drop your armor right down to a 2 and, use multiple abilities on this board and just know that Allah's Blessing has your back. You will receive no hits in return. It also works when your buddy closes ranks. That's something like if your buddy's playing the Mutts, you'll find out pretty quickly, maybe I should never close ranks when he has Allah's Blessing up, because you typically are going from a unit of 8 warriors is going to 4 dice. And here you are, he sees you close ranks, so all of a sudden he sweeps Allah's Blessing. You might as well just, push your dice off to the side. He can do anything he wants, lower his armor down to a 2, and just beat you up and get out of it without any damage to himself. So it's spendy, but it's a very key play.
Yeah, this is a ability that is worth 2 dice, and you will use it for 2. There's a lot of abilities. Okay, decent. They just happen to cost 2 for some reason, and you don't quite get to squeeze them in. But this one, you're making room to get this one in here. This is an ability that when you say it, like your opponent has to like read it a couple times, and then they're like, well, that means I'm not going to kill any guys since you did that. You reduce your armor down, but if you're using this on Hearth Guards, even warriors, 5 to 4, 4 to 3, whatever. You're getting 4 hits. That's kind of an average roll. It's such a big number, 4. I wonder how they decided on that. But yeah, this will shut down almost any attack, really. In the right circumstances. Sure, you can get your berserkers rolling 30 dice. Maybe it won't matter in that situation, but just in your normal average run-of-the-mill saga match, this will keep your Hearth Guard alive. This will just shut down that one combat. So great ability. You don't use it for shooting ever, but
no, never have.
Yeah,
I need it for melee. So
yeah, good to queue up. Are you? So it is the 2 dice, the 2 commons. Do you find yourself like later in the game kind of like, what should I? Are there other abilities you would go to?
Yeah. So I don't want to jump ahead. That is the issue. Like, you're going to have to pick a path. And in a couple, 3 of my recent games with the Mutts, I have faced warbands that are just top of the charts for shooting. And the only way I was able to stay in the game in those cases was Fanaticism. And Fanaticism we'll get to, but it's a 2 dice ability. So if you get Fanaticism and then you power up Allah's Blessing, there's 4, and you might only have 6. So it's kind of hard to do all things. You're going to have to make a decision. Is the enemy going to just shoot you off the table? In which case the priority goes on Fanaticism. If they're not, if you think you can bear up under the shooting, then Allah's goes right to the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll definitely block one shooting attack. So maybe if you're up against Crusaders, they got the crossbows, popping chinks in the armor. This will counter. Maybe that is worth the 2 dice stopping that particular assault. But if they're just chicken away at you, yeah, it's not going to really save you necessarily. So, okay. Yeah, great ability. Very annoying to play against, I will say. All right. Mortal Blow. This is another one here that
Oh, yeah.
doesn't feel like it's fair, but they always have to, you're reducing your armor by 1, so that's factored,
Yes.
so it should be a little better than your average Saga ability when you
Right.
factor that in. So you can use any dice you want here. You reduce your
Nice.
armor by 1 to gain 4 attack dice, 2 defense dice, and if you use a rare, you gain 6 attack dice and 4 defense dice. So, in my opinion, especially if you're using the rare, more than
Yes.
making up and the loss of armor. And then all of a sudden, this little 6-pack of warriors is dishing out 12 attacks. Not too shabby.
Right.
Is this where your rare is going, Monty?
Yeah, it's so good. It does take my first rare. I mean, now I'm kind of nervous because, like, you say this, you're like, wait, have I thought of everything? But what other Saga ability gets you 10 dice,
Yeah,
6 attack
seriously,
and 4
yeah.
defensive dice? That's amazing.
There's just a couple out there. Pagan
Right.
Roos, can get 1.
Yeah, they get crazy. They do,
good.
but sweet.
Whatever it's called. But yeah, there aren't a lot of them out there.
No.
And yeah, this is a great ability. And when are you combining these abilities? Is this Mortal Blow by itself?
Yeah,
Typically,
so
and
it's so
Allah's
good.
Blessing by itself. When do you stack these?
Right. So this gets a little tricky because I mean that's the challenge, and so if someone decides to run Mutts, give yourself some games to get kind of a feel for this. It's not something I think. Well, I mean, for your average Saga player, it's going to take a few reps to kind of figure out where the trades are and what combos you want to stack.
Yes.
It's easy to trade units, but you don't really want to trade units. You want to beat your opponent's unit off the table, and then you want to be alive. That's the ideal. With some situational things, like if you could take a warlord, maybe then you're happy to trade like a unit, 4 Hearth Guard or 6 warriors. But you don't really want to just trade unit for unit. You want to deliver haymakers. So Mortal Blow, especially with a rare, is good enough that you could do that by itself. But if I'm really laying into someone, there are other, like Allah's Blessing combined with a couple of these on a unit of Hearth Guard means you could just, that is a haymaker when you do 3 abilities. Their hits aren't coming through on you, maybe because you foolishly closed ranks or he's hitting levy, and they could just destroy whatever they're hitting. So those are your like key attacks you're trying to build. But at the same time, there also are times when you look around and you're like, maybe you can get a shot on the warlord, and maybe you hope you dice well. And I mean, Mortal Blow is one of those ones where if your dice are running out, it could be, that could be where your dice go, and that could be your attack for the turn, your key attack.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm hearing you. There's, with this board, it's like you kind of got to know the Saga fundamentals, the basic Saga math to know when flipping these is going to be in your favor. Because sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes, using multiples of these isn't like moving the needle, necessarily.
Right.
You want to save them for multiple
I've done that.
combats. So, yeah, I think it's a board where you're not automatically comboing these up the way that you would do, with other boards per se. So, yeah, good discussion here. Let's move down to Bloodbath.
Oh, yes.
This first row. This is the row of sadness, or column of sadness for the opponent. The other 2 columns are okay, but this one has a very nasty foundation here in Bloodbath. It's an uncommon melee ability. Reduce your armor by 1 and discard 3 attack dice. Each of your opponent's attack dice, which does not score a hit, adds an automatic hit to the hits you inflict on them. And we will say that there is no limit to the number of hits that can be bounced back to your opponent. It just, whatever, how many attacks they have, that could come back to them. So, yeah, Monty, what do What do you got to say about this?
Whew, this is a little tricky, but let me kind of walk through the parameters of like, I mean, this is actually a defensive play. And you're like, what? No, this actually is a defensive play. It can be an offensive play, but it can be a defensive one too, because your opponent, especially if he keeps playing your mutts, is probably going to learn a couple things. He's going to learn that the mutts love destroying Hearth Guard, and the bigger the units, right?
Yeah.
The bigger the units, if you have an 8-pack of Hearth Guard against the mutts, you won't do that twice, because this ability is perfect for those big units of Hearth Guard. If that big unit of Hearth Guard gets even 1 fatigue, or even if it's just a straight up roll and that big unit of Hearth Guard goes to mop up a 3-man warrior unit foolishly, and he's throwing 12 dice, if he's hitting you on instead of 4s but 3s, so he's going to miss with 1/3 of them. So 1/3 of, let's say, 12 attack dice on your 6-pack of Hearth Guard is going to be 4 hits on his Hearth Guard. Like, wow, how is that possible, right? I mean, you didn't think that could happen. So it's both a thing you can plan for to mop your opponent's big units, and it's also a thing you can use to protect your beat up units as the game goes on. You can hold this in place, and then your opponent's going to be, you can see them, they're going to be like, they're scratching their chin. They're like, now, should I try to go get that small pack of warriors? Maybe I shouldn't. I should just leave those alone. You also, this is where the camel comes in, right? And and I don't know, I'm betting that Thomas popped this on you, but
yes, we've discussed it many a time.
Exactly. He gets those camels on you, and now he plays this ability. His camels go to a 4, but if you with your -1 to fighting camels, he's back to a 5. If you have a fatigue, he could get that up to a 6. And if you have 2 fatigues, all your dice are going to miss, and they're going to all land right on your head. That's like the perfect play.
So yeah, that's kind of the holy grail. The auto miss is a little trickier to do because you reduce your armor by 1, but the camel -1 helps if they were exhausted. -1, taking the fatigues up. If you get your armor up to 5 or 6 with this ability, you're doing well. You're happy. This one is like the opponent needs to know the Saga fundamentals and the Saga math and factor that in, because if you're not careful, you'll charge in and then, oh, you're taking your armor up. Oh, okay. And then, okay. Oh boy. All right. This is no good here. So definitely ability you need to be aware of, and you need to factor it in. And that was kind of interesting. So I would kind of be reluctant to use it unless I could get my armor up to 5 or 6 and kind of plan around it on the attack. But you were kind of talking about on the defense, just using it on a warrior unit without anything else, going down to a 3. Like you'd be happy with that, just getting the few hits.
Yeah. So again, it's the math hammer. If it's a unit of 6 Hearth Guard, and again, this is kind of situational. But I mean, it's a recent situation. In my game, I was playing my Baltic Crusaders versus my buddy's Mutts, and he had some small units, and I saw he had some dice parked, and he kept them parked, and I knew what he was doing. He was waiting for me to foolishly kind of come in and try to mop up some of these small units. Then he was going to, the holy hand grenade, he was going to blow me up. So I was doing the math myself. I was like, okay, if this fresh unit of Hearth Guard goes in, he could do this, he could do this. And I'm like, and if I fluff my rolls, I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I know what you're doing.
You guys are fighting the battle in your minds. The dice haven't even moved.
He's winning, right? I didn't want to add combat dice. It was ridiculous. But I knew what he was doing, and I think there are those edge cases where I mean, it's tricky because if your warriors, if he takes you, let's say you're a unit of 3 warriors because you got beat up, so you have a fatigue, so he'll spend that to take you from a 4 to a 3, and you can spend your 3 to a 2, so you're going to die, so you're going to lose these 3 Hearth Guard figures. But if he's coming back with enough dice, if he's coming in with 12 dice or more,
sure,
he's going to dish.
If he has a fatigue,
he's going to dish. Yeah,
and you take it up to 3. Yeah, I think 3s at least. Yeah,
Exactly. So it's a little bit of a puzzle, and you got to move fast. Like, you got to just take a chance. That's why, like, go ahead and have a gambler's attitude and try it a few times, right?
Yeah, situational. I think that's like a lot of these abilities. Situational. Here's another situational one. We're popping back up to the top. We got a rare on Fight to the Death.
Yep.
During this melee, all attack dice get a +2 bonus. Monty, that's you, and then that's me as well.
Yeah, it is, dude. It is.
So
you probably want to pair this with something else, right? You probably want to pair this situationally, like Allah's Blessing, where you know that you're either going to dump if your buddy closed ranks. Terrible mistake. If you went from 8 to 4 dice, you can pop Fight to the Death and go, you get a +2. Oh, yeah, your 4 hits aren't going to stick. But all my hits are going to stick. So that's a nice pairing.
Yes, that's
another nice pairing is, again, it's a little situational, but I was playing Ambush, and the whole fight was like right in the middle of the table trying to get the carts, the objectives, and it was a huge mess. And my 4-pack of Hearth Guards stole one of the objectives back, but I had left my dice parked. I had a rare in Fight to the Death, and I had a rare in Promise of Paradise. And sure enough, my buddy went after my Hearth Guard unit. He dropped my armor with my fatigue. I played Fight to the Death. All of a sudden, I could see a look in his eye. Then I played Promise of Paradise and with a rare, and he killed me, and I dished fatigue in every direction.
Yeah.
Everything in his warband got a fatigue, and he just got fatigue bombed. And he shook his head because it really was it was kind of the moment in the game where it just turned. Everything got bombed, and it was like, yes, it worked.
So Promise of Paradise. We'll get to that one, but it gives a big advantage.
Combos,
no worries.
right?
Yeah, if your unit's destroyed. So if you want your unit to die, this one's a pretty good one because you're going to take down some of the enemy. And then this one, basically whenever they can't fight back and you really want to hammer them, it's a good one. In certain scenarios, if you can go against the baggage, or it's kind of limited. Sometimes you can't use advanced abilities. Sometimes you can't.
Right.
The one where one guy has 3 baggages and he's trying to get them off the board. In that one, I believe it's a free-for-all. You can use whatever you want. So this one is like really good for taking out those guys because they just dish out 3 attacks. But they're armor 5, so normally it's pretty tough to kill them by plowing a unit, and you're hitting them on 3s before anything happens. It's good, good for killing the objectives and baggage and stuff in the scenarios if you can use it, but you can't always. This is another one you gotta know the Saga math, man. If you're a newbie, just popping this one, it might help you, it might not. You gotta pick the right combats. If you got a boatload of dice and they don't, that's a good start.
Right. It's a good place to take out a warlord too, right? Like, you're willing to trade that 6-pack of Hearth Guard, or maybe even a 4-pack of 6-pack of warriors, or 4-pack of Hearth Guard for the warlord, especially when both sides are getting the +2. You don't care that you're going to die. You want to just take that warlord out and maybe dish a fatigue bomb to everyone surrounding him.
I mean, that'd be nasty. Pack of warriors, 6 warriors, pop mortal blow, and Fight to the Death, and 12 attacks, hitting a warlord on 3 before anything else gets factored in. That's pretty good. That's nasty math. I don't want to be the warlord in that situation. So definitely, you can force that trade to go through. All right, let's go down to Fanaticism. This is a common and uncommon orders reaction. So you don't get to use it during your turn, but on the enemy's turn, you can reroll all your 1s until the end of the turn. You may reroll all your 1s during each shooting attack and each melee, while your opponent must reroll all their 6s. So I forgot, is there any facts for the mutts on these abilities or anything?
No facts that I can think
changes.
of.
Okay.
Yeah, the board is solid. It's all just the way it reads.
Okay, because this one, I mean,
I can
really
say, like,
shoot during their turn. Maybe you can with those tribal hunters, actually.
Right.
You
I think
cheeky dog.
That's it, dude. That is exactly it. And by ones during each shooting attack and melee, it's a combo of like when he's shooting at you, you roll a 1 on your defensive dice, you re-roll it. When he rolls a 6 to hit you, he re-rolls it. If it's a melee, and this is up, you get the benefit of both ends. You re-roll your 1s in the melee. You re-roll your 1s on saves. He's re-rolling his 6s in the melee trying to kill you. He's re-rolling his 6 on defensive saves. And holy cow, in active turns and against warbands that are built to shoot you, I did this just recently against the Byzantines. And the Byzantines were in a tooled-up shooting build. They were putting out 20 to 24 shots a turn. I will say it was conquering territory, so I was able to get some key units into some hard cover, but I became almost like unbreakable with this combination, and I made sure Fanaticism was up every turn, and so I could weather just massive amounts of shooting. And my poor opponent, he was rolling 6s, he was picking them up, he was re-rolling them, they were misses. I'd roll 2 or 3 1s, I'd pick them up, I'd re-roll them, they were saves, and you just leverage this turn after turn, and it's decisive.
Yeah, it makes a difference. You kind of just have to believe that it's going to make a difference. Like when you're spending the dice, you're like, well, I hope those numbers come out. But actually, it does make a difference. Because I remember playing against Scott, he would use it like every turn, and especially when you're going against Hearth Guard, hitting on 5s or 6s, and he's re-roll. I'm re-rolling the 6s. Well,
that's it.
I'm probably not going to hit if I have to re-roll it, so I don't like it. It matters. It adds up. So in your opinion, worth the 2 dice?
It is. I'm going to use it every time I'm facing the very shooty warbands. If I'm facing Saracens, if I'm facing Huns, if I'm facing the Byzantines, if I'm facing the Irish, playing out of Asia's, I'm absolutely going to put this up, because without it, you will be shot off the table. You can be shot off the table. And like you said, the edge cases that are so interesting, like you said, for the Hearth Guard, they're only hitting you on 5s and 6s, so 1/2 of all the hits they dish are re-rolled, and they're just, most of those will come up misses. And if you're in cover, if you're in any cover at all when they're shooting at you, then you're saving on 3s, so once again, 1s and 2s are failed saves, so when you're re-rolling your 1s, in cover, you're re-rolling half the misses. So, I mean, it's just math. And it's just like, I've watched it in play recently, and I'm like, holy hell, if I didn't have this, I would have undoubtedly lost. And then when you add in like tribal hunters, because they get to shoot before a charge comes in on them, guess what? This is an order's reaction. So when you miss with your tribal hunters, they re-roll their 1s on their shooting attack. And when they get beat up, and you fail to make your saves on a 1, you're re-rolling those. And when your opponent is trying to kill your tribal hunters, any 6s are re-rolled, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And you're right, there will be times where you roll in the edges, but over a game and doing it multiple times, it's an expensive tax, but it will keep you in the game where otherwise you could potentially be shot off the table.
Yeah. What's interesting is kind of the mid-game to lay when you're low on dice. When do you put the 2 dice in here and just kind of roll with like vanilla combats, versus using those 2 dice for Mortal Blow or Bloodbath?
So
it's kind of a
Rodge,
tough calculation, yeah.
Right. And there will be times where you just don't throw a crescent, right? And then you're just screwed. In my recent game, I got an early lead and I was sweating because the Byzantines were just pouring shooting on, hoping that volume could get through and get me. And I picked up my dice, I threw them. There was 1 rare and 5 scimitars. And I was like, oh, a little sweat on my brow. I picked up the rare, put it in the activation pool, and I'm like, please give me a crescent. Because otherwise I would have been eating those 20 to 24 shots, and there would not be re-rolls. But I spit 1 more out. So, but yeah, there'll be times where you just can't roll a crescent, and guess what? I mean, the decision's been made for you.
That's tough, there. Bloodbath's a crescent, like Gene's is a crescent. So you got some competition for that.
You do. That's one
there.
of the challenges on the board, for sure.
All right, well, let's pop down to Ajira. This is an uncommon or rare activation. Remove one of your Fanatic models as casualty. So Fanatic is a Hearth Guard.
Yep.
And you can activate up to 3 units within long of the unit which lost the figure. These activations do not generate a fatigue. It could be the unit itself as well.
Yep, exactly.
So this is interesting. So we've kind of talked about this one before, but I always told Tom that this is you kind of use towards the end of the game when you're low on Saga dice. You know, your Hearthguard units beat up. You got 2 or 3 of them. You're probably never going to throw them into combat again. Then you can use this to get some efficiency for your activations, and you can still use your Saga dice to plow, load up your melee abilities. So you probably don't have any issue with that. That probably happens. But you talked about using it like up front, like a turn 2, 1 or 2, or early game, which I never really considered.
Right. So the idea was it's one of those things where you're looking for targets of opportunity. And so one thing to keep in your pocket when you're playing the Mutts is Hijra gives you the opportunity to like double move on a charge. And with mounted or camels, mounted would be a double move, would be 24-inch charge range with no fatigue. That means you can really, cover some ground. And for the camel unit has a range of 18 inches on a double move without a fatigue. And if that double move with a cavalry unit is into a 6-pack of mounted Hearth Guard or 8-pack of mounted Hearth Guard, perfection, right? Your opponent was thinking they're safe, but they're not safe.
So that the Saga math checks out, and that's worth it. But there's a lot of, if you're a newbie, the Saga, you might do things where the Saga math is shaking its head at you, going, oh, "What are you doing here?" It's kind of cool. So you do have something where you can get in without fatigue, like Jeans kind of does it for you,
right,
on a basic level. But having multiples is always nice. And like I said, I think definitely late game, it's worth it.
Yeah,
how many times a game are you using this? Just once, if at all, or for sure, so twice a game? Or
my opponents are pretty cagey. They've seen my Mutt tricks, so I can't really break them out on them anymore. Sure. So Hijra tends to be late game. And like one game, it was so key. I was down to 3 Saga dice. My units are beat up. I've got fatigues everywhere. And I hate doing this, right? I mean, you hate to hand like victory points to your opponent. Yes. But it's like, well, I pick up a Hearth Guard, and now I can go 12 inches left, 12 inches right, forward, back, just figure out who the units are. And I used it to like sweep fatigue and push on some objectives. And if I hadn't cleaned up, like my opponent would have been spending my fatigue to, trip me up on my movement or spend it in combat. And I was like, it was so important to get that fatigue off. I was glad to spend one Hearthguard figure to clean up.
Sacrifice one to save the many.
Sorry, dude. Sorry, dude. You got to go.
Awesome. Definitely something to have in your back pocket. Not going to complain. Up top, we've got Name of Allah. This is a sword or uncommon. Common or uncommon. Reduce your armor by 1, and you can reroll all your attack dice, which do not score a hit here.
So good. You know how rerolls will bail you, You throw 8, 10, 12 dice, you're like, oh. And then you go, wait, rerolls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially going in just against Hearthguard or, hitting on 4s or 5. Yes. I hate hitting on 4s.
Yep.
They're just so dicey. You can go either way. So, you know what? You can hit me on 3s, but I'm going to reroll all my 4s. Makes me feel good. So this one, definitely combos well with Mortal Blow. And so this is the 4th ability where you reduce your armor by 1. So generally, you can only do 2 of those 4 on a unit of warriors. If you're fatigued and your opponent burns a fatigue, you can only use 1 of them. So I think that could come into play potentially if they're charging you, burn your fatigue to start with. You only got one chance to use one of these. So, I mean, Mortal Blow and Name of Allah would be a nice, tasty combo on your turn. But if they're coming into you, you might not get to use both of them, which would be a shame. But, yeah, common or uncommon here. So that's got to be nice, having this. Alleviate some of the pressure on the crescents flow, Monty.
Exactly. Very key. I like this one.
Is this... How often are you using this one? Is this the cream on top? Or, I mean, are you going to do Mortal Blow first? What if you don't get a rare for Mortal Blow, and it's just going to be a common or uncommon? Do you still go to Mortal Blow before Name of Allah here?
So much of this is math hammer again, right? It really is. I'm sorry. I mean, and it's so...
Kind of depends on what target you're going into, whether you want to live or not. Yeah.
Exactly. If I'm trying to send my small unit in to clean up another one, maybe I don't mind, especially Hearth Guard, those re-rolls. You know how it goes. You spit out like one hit, and then you pick them up and roll them again. You're like, oh, there's 3, 4 more. It's just so good. So I do like to stack it. I rarely use it by itself. Mortal Blow, the pairing there just gets you volume of dice. So that 6-pack of dice could be throwing 10. Maybe my warriors have gone from 4 to 3 and 3 to 2. But if the target is important enough, I'm throwing 10 with re-rolls. That'll take out, I mean, that could take out a warlord. That could take out a, Hearth Guard unit entirely. It's really a nice hard punch.
Yeah. Good ability. Me like it a lot. Okay. Now, Promise of Paradise, Monty. Uncommon or rare. You're a defender. It's a melee.
Yes.
Or shooting reaction. If you're getting shot at. If you're getting charged, you can pop this sucker here. If your unit is eliminated during this melee or shooting attack, each enemy unit within short of the last figure to be removed suffers a fatigue. At the moment, it is removed as a casualty here. And if you use a rare, all enemy units within long are affected instead. Right. So I think, did you say that the first rare goes here earlier?
I do reach for the fences. I do reach for the fences on this one, and here's why. Like within S of a unit, I mean, that's okay.
It's the unit that killed it, basically, is all you can count on. Right. So they could take 2 fatigues, which...
That's it.
It isn't too shabby, but for just that rare, the volume... We could do the Saga math of the diameter of a 24-inch circle versus an 8-inch circle.
Yes. It's a huge difference. And I one other thing, like if I could just if you're going to put a rare on here, you want to bake in all of the best chances you can, right? So I have never used this on a shooting reaction just because shooting is so streaky.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yep.
Right?
Just bang them all, the 4-ups, yep.
Right. So I put a rare here, but then I probably will if I really want to make sure it happens, I need to wait. I got to wait. I want to pop this thing at the right moment with the most chance of it happening. So again, you have to really have a hot hand, but if I have fight to the death, if I have a fatigue, if my opponent is going in there and he's just smashing this unit and I'm thinking it looks like it's gone, I can juice the death of that unit and then play Promise. And the few times I've done that, I have managed to, see my unit get killed, because you have the ability to, lower your own armor. So why not if you're going to be playing Promise of Paradise?
Yes, so Bloodbath and Name of Allah just outright lower your armor. Mortal Blow, Allah's Blessing probably don't work because you get defense dice. And Fight to the Death. So 3 of your abilities here can really contribute to your own destruction. And yeah, when this is on, you get some really weird Saga interactions. I want to kill you, but I don't want to wipe you out. And mathematically, if I roll good here, I could kill you. So why don't you pop it? But you get your opponent holding back on their Saga abilities. They don't want to pop the good abilities until this is cleared off the board. Yeah. So
It's true.
It's a very,
true.
defensive, kind of hard to put in words. I mean, your opponent is either going to try to avoid it or they're just going to, all right, I'm going to eat it and kind of plan around it. So in the video battle report, the first one against Tom, this happened in the middle of the game, and basically I knew it was going to happen and kind of had to load up tons of activations to rest and kind of work around it. And yeah, it's tough. You just gotta eat it. Yeah, great ability. Definitely good for mind games.
Right.
A lot of fun.
Agree.
Fun for that.
Agree. When I see it up, I like right away I start like doing my own math, and I'm like, I don't want to do too many attacks. And that's the strange thing, right? As the mutts, you can leave up Promise of Paradise, you could leave up Fight to the Death, you can leave up, maybe one other one, and your opponent is like, they're looking and they're thinking and they're having paralysis, analysis paralysis, as they're like, wait a minute, if I do this, he might do that. If I do this, he might do that. And you're just sitting there cracking your knuckles. You're like, yes. Why don't you punch me first?
Yeah, well, maybe I don't want to fight this turn. It's like, well, there's only like 3 more turns and it's not going away,
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's tough as the opponent. You just got to eat it. So, yeah, if your mutt player opponent doesn't roll a rare, you just got to be doing little dances and hopping around.
Right.
Bless your lucky stars, friend. That's one of the nastiest tools in the toolbox here.
Agree.
It's just difficult to avoid. So lovely ability. And let's round it out with, I'm going to say Yahanam for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Orders.
That sounds good.
Until the start of your next turn, all defense dice which cancel a hit must be re-rolled. So this is you and me, melee or shooting. And, well, I don't know. It seems good. It's a rare. It's a third ability that requires a rare. Mortal Blow is really good with a rare. So this is in some really tough competition with Promise of Paradise, first off. The proverbial double-edged sword, my friend.
Right.
Are you using this? When are you using it? What?
Never, not even once. And the few times that I've seen it used, it has backfired and blown up. And recently it did that again. And I will say, like, again, it's maybe not enough data to be scientific, but I remember Andy Lyon, told me a story once that he was prepping for the U.S. Grand Melee. He was bringing mutts that year. Mm-hmm. And he said, Monty, I've put a sticker over Yahanam. And I said, oh, no, why is that? He goes, well, I played it when I was practicing against Tracy. And, I did my little bit. And then in her turn, holy cow, it cost them the game. And that's really the issue, is that for a rare, you have to do things in your turn that make this worth spending a rare on it. And then guess what? Your opponent now knows they have free reign in their turn. They're getting the same benefit back on you. They could shoot you up. They could melee you, whatever it is. It's coming back on you like a boomerang. And that's kind of what happened in my most recent game was my buddy played it. And yeah, I had to make my re-rolls, but I made him pay for it in my turn because I just did waves of shooting. And every time he saved those shots, he had to re-roll them, and a lot of people died to shooting that turn.
Yeah, it's tough. If it was till the end of your turn, you could
yes.
Okay, my guys will take the hits. I'm going to have to make sure to, nullify it with certain abilities or, just understand, pick the units I'm going in with, knowing that they're going to die. But yeah, you're right. The other guy's turn, you can just plow in there as he pleases. So, yeah, very, very corner case, I guess. If you're second player on the last turn of the game, and you got a bucket load of a rare, you've loaded up activation pool 3 times and still rolled. You still got a couple rares at the end of it. Yahanam, sure, why not? Yeah, because you really,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it has to be the killer punch, and they can't have any means of getting back at you. So, shooting is hard to hide from shooting. Maybe against a foot faction, you could deal some damage and run off.
Mm-hmm.
Corner case, tough to figure out how the Saga math plays out on this one, especially with a lot of other good abilities using a rare. So, yeah, we're going to round it out there. Kind of a little bit of a dud there, but I mean,
That's okay.
almost, all of these other abilities are solid. So,
Oh, yeah.
looks like a board with a lot of mental calculations
Yep.
for sure. And, yeah. So how's it all play out here, Monty? You do some damage, win the game, right?
It's
simple.
Right. So the hard thing about the mutts, I will say, just right out the gate here, is that not having access to levy is a little bit tough. That's a little bit of a ding, right? That's
the
just
land
so
of
good.
levy shooters and levy crossbows.
Exactly.
They're down a peg because those troops are inherently good on their own, and many of the boards can soup them up, really. And
exactly. And then, I mean, this is just me. I get a little greedy here, but I would say if the mutts had access to mounted warriors, look out. I mean, they could just be devastating, but they don't. You work with what they have. So in my experience, like, this board is a lot of fun. I've never brought mutts out and I mean, it's like, and as I'm playing the game, it's really seat of the pants. It's like, it's like maybe jazz, like you're improvising as you go.
Yeah.
You place your dice sometimes and you're not even 100% sure what you're going to do, but you're like, well, if I don't use them in my opponent's turn, I'll figure it out later. Like, you park that one in Promise of Paradise, the rare there, you're like, I'll get back to you. And maybe you get fancy and you get like 2 or 3 rares. You park one and fight to the death. I'm not going to use that right away, but I'll get back to you. And then your opponent is like, they're kind of puzzling it out. You play the scenario and you really have some unusual moves. But I will say, like, where you get a little hamstrung is there are turns, like, especially when I play my warrior heavy build, my Hearth Guard's gone or it's beat up, and then I throw, all crescents, and then all I've got is a Weobei and a Like Jinns to move my warriors around. Or conversely, I throw all scimitars, and then I'm like, oh, well, I won't be doing, go down the list here, Bloodbath, Hijra, Fanaticism, Promise. I won't be doing Allah Akbar. So there do come those moments where you're going to have to, maybe it's not a key turn, your dice aren't quite right, try to nudge it forward one turn. But I do see really good players bring these guys out to events. And like I said, Andy's brought them. I've seen other players bring them. They're a lot of fun. They're just kind of a wild and woolly bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. As a faction I'm looking at to play, anything which you're killing your own guys and your opponent is just tickled whenever that happens. They just love it when your own guys are going. As long as you're pulling off a heap of your own guys at the same time they're generally pretty jolly about it. So it's a good Saga players army. And I would say probably more advanced on the boards. I think, in the book they have those little advanced star ratings. I'd put this one kind of more towards the top. I mean, mechanically, it's not, you could follow everything if you're a new player, but when to pop them, when to combine them, when to, because a lot of them are double-edged swords, coming back at you. So knowing when it's wise to use them and when not to, you just need a little bit of Saga under your belt to probably do well with them. And what do you think about these guys in like all comers, all ages environment versus just in the Crusades, let's say? Is there a difference in their strength, in your opinion, in a Crusades versus all comers?
Yeah. So like the one twist I would add is if you say at this event, I can bring 1 point of levy, 1 point of mercenaries, that like doubles my chance of taking them. I feel like the tribal hunters helps them so much in a world where there's so many shooting factions. And when I play my mutts with no shooting at all, people will get like right up in my face where they're mounted, and I mean, as long as they're not near the camels, right? But they're not worried about being shot. And it's just nice to have that ranged threat just so that they're not so aggressive. So I think if they can take a point of mercs, I think they become that much better. A lot of times locally, like that's not the case. And then I think that kind of clicks them down just a little bit because, now your choice is to take no shooting at all or take the bow warriors, which you really don't want to do.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah. I played against them. Yeah. It's nice having bows, but you want them on the levee, Monty, not the warriors.
You really do. You really do. Like, that's the whole point. When my warrior bow get into a shooting match with levee bow, I mean, that's not going to turn out well. That's just, it's not
times
good.
there. So, okay. Tribal hunters, thumbs up.
Yep. So good.
Have you tried any other mercs with these guys?
Borderers
Can you
are
take
close.
the flame? Can you take the bombers?
Yeah, you can, and without going into like the deep thing,
yeah.
I've looked at Nafatin like 3 or 4 times, and to my mind and the way I play, it just doesn't make any sense. They were so kneecapped, like they were wild in version 1, but they could fry you up, and now in version 2, no.
I think that they had to tone them down quite a bit. So okay, so when you want your little bit of shooting, you want to go for the hunters, not the Nafatin. So. All right. Yeah. I think that just about does it, Monty.
Awesome.
Is that it? What manufacturers you like for your mutts here?
Wow, you've got so many choices here, and I'll try to I'm gonna end up missing someone. So if you want the Fanatics with face covering, Artisan Miniatures has a beautiful line of Arab figures for the right era, just lots of poses, mounted, foot, everything. You've also got obviously the Gripping Beast plastics, which are very affordable and nice. You could do plastics for if you're going to do your bow warriors or tribal hunters, that's an option. Plastic warriors, your camels, you're probably going to have to go to, I got to think about this for a minute. Gripping Beast has them for sure. God, I struggled a little bit, and I'm gonna have to come back to where I found them. There aren't a lot of camels, but there's Gripping Beast medals if you prefer that. There's footsore medals are gorgeous. There's just a whole. Really, it's like, what do you want? First of all, do you want plastic or metals? And once you make that decision, then you start looking around and you find the figures that match. Like what you think stylistically you want your Mutatawwi'a to look like.
So what are the Fifth Army here? It's sounds like modern, like World War. The Mutatawwi'a Fifth Army coming in. What do you think you're going to use for them?
Right. I did love the Artisan figures. They might be my favorite. They're just so good. And lots of poses, lots of kind of interesting characters. A drummer. The Blackguard look perfect for the warrior types here. So I would probably do Artisan for the 5th.
Yeah, those are some great figs. I got my eye on those. So awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Monty.
Yeah,
much
thanks
appreciated.
For having me on again.
If you have if we've been talking Fooey and want to learn us up, comment below. Tell us how you do it. Tell us about all your Allah Akbar slain enemies, all your victories of popping that 8 dice every turn right there, Monty. Don't even move. Just trade death.
I love it.
I would love to hear what people have slain there. If you would like to suggest a faction that hasn't been covered yet for a faction review, you can hop on to Patreon. I will listen to patrons. That's one of the benefits about being a patron. So check that out. But Monty, doing double duty here. I appreciate it. The folks at home appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. We're going to be talking again next week in real time. I don't know, in release time. In release land, it might not be next week, but we'll be talking again soon. Sure enough. And I really appreciate everything you do. And we'll catch y'all next time. Later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.